Hello, my Crystal Loves Texas Facebook, YouTube family.
Facebook,
I know.
YouTube, TikTok,
I know.
Instagram,
And
the whole social media community.
I almost forgot. And the thing about it is, we didn't even run our intro this time, Rebecca, because we came in at the drop of a hat because we
We
needed
li-
to address some things.
We literally came in from off the campaign trail, guys. Like we had events this morning. I said, Crystal, this is prime time. We shouldn't wait till another Friday. Let's just go to
Yeah.
the studio and talk about this ASAP.
And that's the good thing of having our own studio, to be able to film in whatever we need to come in here and talk about something, because this is important. And it's important to me because it's basically a piece of history dying, a piece of history being on the chopping block. And let's look at it and examine it and see if it was really a manufactured effort.
Okay.
If it was all something that was a manufactured effort. And I think when we start peeling back the layers, we'll see that this didn't come out of nowhere. And what we're talking about are the school closures, the 12 school closures that will take place in the 26-27 school year, and how that came about. And that, coupled with the loss of 6,000 additional students from HISD or from that area.
No. 13,000.
13,000 from where? From the
All over
district.
the district.
From the district. And a total of about 10,000
Teachers.
teachers.
So it was 10,000 teachers, and it was actually
Yeah.
over 13,000.
Yeah.
But that's where they got it cut off for right now.
So here's the thing. I left HISD in 2023. I was a 15-year HISD teacher, union representative, union steward on my campus. And when the takeover happened, one thing that was so distressing to me, it was because it seemed like so much was being done behind closed doors. And I understand sometimes when things have to shift.
Right.
In life, you have to be able to make shifts. But when you do that, and especially when you're in a position of being in charge of a shift, it's so important that you are transparent with the people that you are going to be working with the people that you're leading, and you don't create a situation whereby people feel as though they were blindsided by anything. And I had some real um, bad feelings about that, because I feel that I was not given a choice and I was blindsided. But we'll circle back around to that. Rebecca, what's going on? What's happened within the last 3 days here in Houston with Houston Independent School District?
So if you haven't been paying attention to this major break that's happening, which I told Crystal we have to go talk about this. Not only because she's a candidate for state representative, Texas House District 131, but because she was a former teacher. Well, we both are former teachers of HISD. And we really wanted to, set the stage and talk about what's happening. So one of the things that is happening, the major thing that is happening, is that they are going to close, or in Mike Miles, who is the superintendent, in appointments only, that he was going to close or consolidate 12 schools. Now, here's where the big buzz is. Normally, when you consolidate schools, and you have a plethora of meetings, right?
Right.
You have meetings with stakeholders, you have meetings with teachers, you have meetings with community leaders, you have, and it's a series of ongoing meetings.
Right.
So in I say in normal times,
Right.
what would normally happen when the school is closed, the superintendent will make their recommendations, and that's okay.
Yes.
Because that's a part of their job to
That's
make
right.
recommendations for
Yes.
school closures. But they do not make those decisions in
Single-handedly.
isolation.
Yes.
right? So they would meet with the parents of those students that attend that school. They would also meet with the community which those schools are in,
Right.
and then they bring all of their feedback back. They bring all of their feedback back to the table, and then the superintendent and his cabinet would discuss it, and then they would take it to the board, and the board would decide whether or not they would bring it to a floor vote,
Right.
or they would decide whether, to
To scrap it for
to
right
scrap
now,
it
or
for
yes.
right now. So I mean, these things are not not done in isolation. It's steps that you have to take before you close the school.
But Rebecca, let me ask you something really quickly, because you may be able to answer this in a more earnest way than I am. Now, schools in HISD, one of the schools in HISD that is slated to be consolidated or closed is, correct me if I'm wrong, Cage Elementary School.
Mhm.
Okay, that school was the feeder pattern school to the school that we both taught in, which was Navarro
Right.
Middle School. Now, Navarro Middle School did not have a huge amount of students. Probably when we were there, it was a smaller middle school, and it may have had 700 to 800 students.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's being generous.
Yes, I'm being generous. I wanted to be generous. But prior to that school being slated for consolidation, one thing that happened in the area was the moving in of a couple of charter schools
Exactly.
in that area. Okay, and when that happens, and ladies and gentlemen, I think it's only fair that we be transparent with this. When charter schools come into the area and parents, for whatever reason, feel that it's a more viable option for their student, they can elect to move their student into the charter school environment. But they don't usually do that unless there is some disappointment with the options that they've had previously, which would be the public school. Okay, if I were a superintendent, Rebecca, coming into a school district that was having challenges, okay? The first thing that I would want to do, if it was really my objective
Mhm.
to make that school district the best that it could be. Because I'm going to tell you something, if that school district is made the absolute best that it could be, it would start diminishing the need for so many charters to be in the area offering these options. But if I were a superintendent and was truly in earnest trying to make the district as good as I could, the first thing I would do, the first thing when I came in, I would try and sit down and have a meeting with everyone, like you said, the stakeholders, namely the teachers. The teachers are the first point of contact for our students.
Are you sure?
Then, hang on. Yeah, it should be.
Should
It should be. Then the principals with everyone at the table, even have some do that first before I even reach out to the parents. But let's try and look at what we have found to be the glitches in the system, where the system is failing. And let's let everybody bring it to the table to see what they think about that, and what their suggestion would be to try to get something done about it. But if it's really not my objective to make it the very best, what I'm going to do is come in and tell you what I'm getting ready to do,
Right.
and not get any of your input, not say, well, listen, this is the direction that we are going to be going. And I understand if some of you are not really feeling that type of commitment with this direction. So I'm giving you the option here of severing your employment, resigning at this point, and finding other options that are a better fit. Was that done?
Well, no, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because the first, that's what would normally happen under normal circumstances.
That's prudent.
Exactly.
Yes.
But that's not even what happened.
No, it's not.
What happened was the question was posed to him last year. Well, actually 2 years in a row.
Mhm.
Are you gonna close schools? Are you gonna close schools? Are you gonna close schools? And of course, he told the media, he told everybody who would listen to him,
Right.
no, that was not on the table. That was not on the table. That was not on the table. He was not closing schools. That was not on the table. That's not what he came here to do. That was his exact words. Okay. Now, when the bond fell, okay, the great, big, beautiful bond that fell, okay, when that fell,
Yeah.
um, there started to be a shift.
And there was a shift in energy
It was a shift in energy
from the superintendent.
from the superintendent.
Yes.
He was very angry.
Yes.
In one breath, he would say, yeah, I don't see the bond failing as a referendum on me. He would say that outwardly and publicly, but his actions said something totally different. What do you mean by that, Rebecca? What I mean is, he would refuse to get HVAC systems fixed.
Right.
Because he said out of his own mouth, since the adults play politics with children's education, I'm not going to fix anything.
Well, no, this is exactly what he said, and you could tell the energy that was behind this. He would say exactly what Rebecca just said and say, well, since the bond didn't pass, we don't have the kids will just have to be cold this winter.
Right.
I mean, and
But in the Chronicle, I was saying his exact quote in the Chronicle.
Oh, wow.
Because when the Chronicle came out and basically grilled him and said, you have all of these HVAC issues and you have this issue and
yes,
grass is not being cut over here.
Yeah.
And, the Chronicle really drilled in on him.
Right.
And his response, his quotable response, that means you can go find the article and see what I'm saying. His quotable response was, since adults play politics with children's education, this is the end result. In other words, I'm not going to do anything because the bond didn't get passed.
And so let's kick that ball on down the way a little bit and talk about how, because I want to talk about the chronological steps that it took for us to get here. So the first step is that I'm not here to close schools.
Right.
Okay. I'm here to make sure that HISD is the best district that it could be.
And make sure that every campus has exactly what it needed to be successful.
Okay. Now let me say this. Let me finish this.
Okay.
And then I want you to kind of piggyback off of what I'm saying because you have the next logical step.
Okay.
Okay. I want it to be the very best that it could be. So 2 days before school, no, exactly 1 week before school started, all teachers were called back to the campus 1 week before school started. Okay. And we were supposed to be out for 2 more weeks. 1 week before school, 1 week before school started. Maybe we were supposed to be out for 1 more week, but we were told that this was at the end of July, I believe, maybe at the end of July, right before school went back into session. There's an emergency meeting here and this may have just been at my campus. You don't have to come, but it's something that you may really be interested in. So my goodness, when you get a letter from your campus from the principal saying that there's an emergency meeting, you don't have to come, but I would sure like that you come. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to be there. Luckily, the reason that I moved and bought my townhouse right by that school is because it was within a 1.5-minute drive for me to get there. So immediately I came down and they said that the meeting is going to be this evening at 5:00. So you are hustling up these teachers from wherever they are. Some are on vacation, some are other places. This came out of nowhere. And the meeting is going to be at 5:00 today. We got down to the campus, as many of us as we could. And our principal said, I just want to let you all know that I'm not going to be the principal here anymore. I've taken another assignment. I want you all to meet the new principal. And here is the new principal. Nothing is going to change. Your hours and your work hours are going to be exactly what they were before. If any new addendums come into the picture, that slack is going to be picked up by teaching assistants and paraprofessional staff. So we left that day. We came back in on, we were sent another letter that said you need to report out to a this was out to a training facility within the district on this day. And it was interesting because on that day, it was a week before contractually we were supposed to come back to school, 1 week prior. And basically the letter said, this is a directive and you need to report, even though my contract says I'm off until next week. So we reported. And when we got there, we had 1 week of training, and the training was disjointed. And that's putting it mildly. It was like it was all kind of thrown together in a mishmash.
Crystal was going to be nice about it, and I'm gonna be real about it. It was a whole disaster.
Okay, so this is what I said. I said, now we were literally 2 days before we had to what do they call it, Rebecca, when you have to sign, when you have to let them know whether or not you're going to be returning to the school?
Letter of intent.
Okay, no, it wasn't a letter of intent. That was in the spring. But anyway, before we could leave without
That's still, it still was
okay.
and a letter of
We were two-
intent.
we were
It was an emergency letter of intent.
We were 2 days before that was going to be over with. So this would have been maybe on a Wednesday when this happened. My question became this. I'm really not interested in the direction that this is going in because I can sort of see the writing on the wall. And I have been a great employee. I have been I have come here with diligence and I have done my job in the way that I was asked to. I've gone above and beyond to make sure it was done in a correct way. And I was as prudent as I could be in doing what you've asked me to do as a teacher. At the very least, give me the option as a professional to say, this is what is going on here. This is the direction that the district is going in. Since it's the direction the district is going in, I am giving you an opportunity, and we're going to extend this for you all at least a week and a half, so that if you want to go and interview at other districts, you will be able to do that without penalty. No, that wasn't done. We were told that on a Wednesday, and the day that it was going to be for us to be able to give that statement saying that we were going to leave or stay was less than 24 hours away. And it was on a Friday. And let me tell you why it was less than 24 hours, because we're talking about a business day. We're talking about an 8-hour day. So at the end of the day on that Wednesday, I had Thursday between 8 and 4 and Friday between 8 and 4.
Which was
To find another, wait, to find another position, to have someone answer my inquiry, to go and interview and have the position offered to me. To me, that was 100% intentional. And we're talking about thousands of teachers being in that lurch. Now, I'm going to say this. If you are so comfortable with your position on your new administration, if you are 100% good and you think it's just the greatest thing since sliced bread, that's fine. You allow teachers to make that decision. That decision was made for us, and that made me furious. What about you?
So my experience was quite opposite of Crystal. Crystal's school was so they had two types of NES schools. They had NES adjacent, NES, which is the new educational system, which is a bunch of BS. And then they had an NES adjacent, which
It was
was
another name for it, but it was
no,
something
it
else.
was NES adjacent.
But go ahead.
So, but my school where I was at was neither. We were okay, but the superintendent gave the option, and I do put that in air quotes, gave the option of us to either opt into the NES system or not opt into the NES system. So we, our acting principal at the time, and I love him to death. Shout out to Dr. Montgomery. He got us all together during the summertime, and like Crystal said, we were all in different places, but we were able to get on the Zoom call. or we would what's the system that HISD used?
Teams.
Teams. We were able to get on the Teams call, the whole faculty and staff. And Dr. Montgomery just basically said, "Hey, this is something we got to vote on. Do y'all want to opt in?" And he gave us the notes and bolts about what opting in was. Now, put a pause right here for just a hot second.
Right.
Because our school was 98% union, HFT had already come to us early and let us know, you know, what NES and what NES adjacent would look like. So we kind of already had an idea, and our school was like, bump that, we're not doing that. So we all came together, and 99% of us voted, and we said, no, we do not want this. And that was the end of that. So Dr. Montgomery turned in our no vote, and we all felt good about not, being NES. When we come back to school, like Crystal said, we come back in the fall for the 2 weeks. So for people who are not familiar with teaching or
The calendar.
the education field, we have what is known as 2 weeks of PD being professional development.
Prior to the first day of school.
Right. So if you ever notice, teachers go back early, students, that's because we have professional development while they're still on summer break.
Right.
So we come to professional development, and everything about our whole system changed.
That's right.
And we were all confused because, again, the union had kind of already told us what NES and NES adjacent was going to be like. So we said no to both. So we're sitting here trying to figure out, wait a minute, because we were told, now let me go back just a little bit. We were told that if we voted to opt out, that nothing was going to change. It was going to be business as usual. If we didn't opt in, and I think it was the same with NES adjacent. They said that y'all could use some of the NES stuff.
Absolutely
right?
not. Let me tell you how it was done on our campus. It was decided by the principal himself. He decided that he wanted to opt us into that without anyone voting on it.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So we're kicking that ball on down the road. So the picture that I'm drawing here for you now is that you have teachers who are livid, because they could have elected to do something else, even if they had 2 weeks.
Right.
They could have elected to have been anywhere else. But here's the thing. The superintendent knew that, and he did not want to have a situation where he had no teachers. If everyone jumped ship right then, if he'd been very honest and transparent, people would have already taken that option to go ahead and do what they needed to do, what was in their best interest. But he didn't want that to happen. So he let us be blindsided. So we're going into the school year with teachers who are livid. And we decided, for me, I decided, you know what? I'm going to go ahead. I know that this is not right for me, but I'm going to go ahead and go forward while I am still looking for something else to do. Okay. So we get to, we implement this system. Some of the things in the system were okay, but many of them
We're not.
We're not. But here's the part that was so upsetting to me. I was upset by the way that the teachers were treated in such an unprofessional manner. Now, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. I was never singled out by the administrators of this new system. Okay, I was never singled out. But on my 8th grade floor, there were 7 teachers on that floor. And at the end of one day, 5 of them were gone. at the end of one day. And this is the way that it was done. I understand that sometimes changes have to be made. Sometimes changes need to be made for the sake of change. Sometimes changes need to be made for different reasons. I understand that. But the way that this was done in a way that was intended to be so humiliating. After we came back from lunch, after lunch, the I think they were called the executive director and it may have been an assistant principal or something. I don't know if it was the building principal. I just can't remember. And the security guard from the school, which was the HISD police person. They came and they asked to speak to the teacher downstairs in the office while a paraprofessional came in, and they told her when they came in, get your purse. Okay, get your purse. So she grabbed her purse and she went down and they had the meeting. And that was the last, this was while students were in the room. That was the last that the students saw of her. She was escorted out of the building, never to be seen again. Now, she definitely landed on her feet because she's in another district now, the same district that I'm in, and she's very happy. But to do that, and the students are saying, "Where's Miss XYZ? Where's Miss XYZ? What happened? Where did she get fired?" You know, that was the intention. And it was intended to instill fear in everyone else around her. So imagine this. So count that on. Four more classrooms down that particular hallway. And I'm right in the middle. And by the time I get ready to leave school that day, everybody on my left and my right, they're gone. And the kids are asking me, now, why could that not have been done at the beginning? They already knew what they were going to do. They already made that decision. Why could that not have been done at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day?
And furthermore,
Yes.
You don't come into a school setting disrupting a school set. First of all, in our profession, people don't fire you on a whim unless you work in a charter school.
Yeah.
Because those are two different
Yeah.
sets of law. You don't get fired on a whim. I don't care if the principal don't like you. I don't care if
There are procedures.
you know, there is a procedure, and it's a plethora of procedures
Right.
that you have to go through. So people, it's not like corporate America. You know, you
Right.
come in, you here today and gone tomorrow, and nobody
Right.
owes you an explanation. And then the excuse that the superintendent wants to use, well, this is a right to work state. So let me explain what right to work is for all the listeners that's out there, no matter what profession you are. If you are on a contract for a job, right to work is null and void. Your contract
It
determines
supersedes.
Right to work is only applied to jobs that are non-contractual. They can get rid of you for any reason. But if you are at a contractual job, right to work does not apply to that.
So Rebecca, let me say this. Those people were walked out.
Yeah,
So that was meant to instill fear,
exactly.
to instill fear and terror into the hearts of every other teacher who was still there. And they did that on the next floor. They went down from my floor. They did that on the seventh grade floor. They did it on the sixth grade floor. And everyone is just looking from left to right. What is going on? Well, at about that time, I said, you know what? This is not for me. I've had enough because I see how they are looking up on us and the professionalism that they're looking up on us with, which was non-existent. So I began reaching out to my union and saying, listen, I don't want to stay here. How can I be able to leave this? Because I was not, when I came into work, I was not informed of exactly the way that things would change, and I'm not in agreement with it. So it's against what I signed up for. And they went, back and forth, and they had the union attorneys talking to the district, and the district was basically disregarding anything that the union was trying to do on behalf of their employees. Until one day, I got into that HISD teachers group, And one teacher on there, and I think it may have been Michelle, she posted something and she said, you know, right now, it's not going to be broadcast throughout this page, but there is a clause that that the HISD has agreed to that says if you would like to leave, ter- terminate your employment with HISD right now, you may do so under something that they developed called the resignation without consent. And that meant that if you fill out the resignation without consent, they will go ahead and allow you to leave and not try and hold you hostage there like they should have done at the beginning of the year, because we knew in some way that was going to rise to the top,
Right.
because it affected so many people. So I was able to leave under the resignation without consent clause that was added by HISD without having my certification threatened by HISD and having that hung over my head, because that's what they were hanging over people's head. If you leave here, then we're going to sanction your certification.
I have your certification sanction.
Yes, and as soon as I heard that, I immediately jumped on that and I began sharing that with other people who were in that chat. And out of respect for the moderators of that particular platform, they said, please do not, don't post this. But if someone reaches out to you, they can reach out to you privately, and you can explain exactly how this worked. So I shared my letter with many teachers who asked me how that was done. But to have an organization completely disregard your professionalism. One more thing, Rebecca, before we talk about why the onslaught of teachers left. Okay, I got to say this. After that happened with me, I went ahead and found something else, at another school district where I'm very happy. But here's the thing. Many teachers were kind of caught in a situation whereby they thought it may get a little bit better. Did it get better?
It got progressively worse.
It got progressively worse. So now we're sitting in a situation that by the end of 2025, or was that 2024? By the end of 2025, I think, how many teachers had the district lost?
10,000.
Okay, now, if you're saying the schools are closing, and I don't know why we didn't intend this, but you cannot tell me categorically that that was not the entire intent, to come in, close schools, have the district look as though it's losing money, losing students, things are that poor, and you don't know why. I believe in my heart that the intent of the entire takeover was to destroy HISD and the types of programs that it had built for the last 100 years.
And here's the thing, and we only are talking about school closures.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about, and this is getting missed in translation.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about the high performing schools are being taken over by nonprofits.
Right.
Let me say that again. Everybody is,
or corporations.
yeah. Well,
Not necessarily nonprofits.
what they're saying is nonprofits. They're
or
saying
corporations.
yeah. So you have on one end, you have, and let's just call a spade, right? You have the black and brown schools that are being closed, and then the high performing schools where it's, we know the majority of where all those are.
Right.
They're being taken over by, now Crystal is saying corporations, the district is saying not corporations, these are nonprofits.
At first, it was nonprofits. But then, as recently as I believe, what is this?
February.
This is February. As last November, they've allowed corporations to come in and be a part of that, where they're adopting these charter schools. And the problem with that is,
And these are not charters. These are the high
high
performing.
performing school, magnet schools.
The magnet
I
schools.
should say magnet. But the problem with that is this, ladies and gentlemen. Let's say that a school is being taken over by a corporation or a nonprofit. Well, all the beliefs and values that go into that nonprofit are now the beliefs and values of that school. It can have everything to do with the students that you want to admit, the students that you would like to exclude, the kinds of things that you want to teach, what you want to be in their curriculum, all of that. Because charter type schools in this state are not held to exactly the same standards as a public school. And they can have their own curriculums. They can have their own ideologies. And no one is really questioning this.
And now we have to look at an even bigger picture, because now the powers that be, Governor Abbott and Patrick and Paxton, who I will always refer to as the Holy Grail of failure, they're done with public and charter. Their whole main concern now is private, and how they can get private schools popped up all over the state of Texas.
And what's the problem with a private school, Rebecca?
The problem with the private school is, number one,
Do they have to educate special education?
no, they do not.
Do they have to let in kids who may be part of the LGBTQ
No.
community?
Whatever
They
their
have to-
private school mission is,
Yeah.
if that child does
Does not
not
fit.
follow that or fit that mission, they
Can
do-
exclude?
they can exclude that.
They can.
They can exclude that. And they don't even have to give you, the parent, an explanation on why the exclusion occurred.
And see, that's a problem, ladies and gentlemen. That is a problem. And instead of trying to make sure, the reasoning for that, I believe, the reasoning for that is to really try to make a definitive separation between classes, and where the classes were getting close to melding. There's some that don't want that melding. They want it to be a definite class system between the haves and the have-nots, and the things that people can be exposed to. And that's the same issue, Rebecca, with the curriculum. Being able to say what can be taught, and if critical thinking can even be introduced in schools, in a classroom. Critical thinking is what makes our country grow.
And then here's another thing, going back to the school closures. If you look at one coupling of a school,
Right.
It's a middle school, Gulfton Middle School, being set in Liberty High School. Why are you putting a middle school? And I don't want to hear
11-year-olds.
I want to hear the conversation of, oh, it's going to be separate. They're not. Their middle schools and high schools should not be on the same campus.
That's right.
If you have districts, HISD is not one of them, but if you have districts that have ninth grade academies,
Right.
and they're a part of high school,
It's a reason that they do that.
right? You have middle schools, not in HISD, but in other districts, that have sixth grade academies that are separate from
For a reason.
for a reason. So then why would you put, and that's my point, is they're not even vetted properly.
Right.
They're not vetted properly at all. It's almost like we're gonna put this school with this school, we're gonna combine this school. You don't know the area you don't
The
understand.
demographic of the area, the kinds of things that are the outside influences in that area, where you're going to have kids who are, and let's be clear, at some of these high schools, you have overage students. You can have a student in a high school that may receive special services that can be up to 21 years old.
Right. So you mean to tell me you're gonna have
An
a
11-year-old,
21-year-old
yes.
and an 11-year-old in the same building?
Yeah.
And who, 12-year-olds and 17-year-olds dating.
Yes.
Everybody might say, oh, well, they'll have barriers in place. But if you have all of that going on one campus, who's to say? And if 10,000 teachers left, that ought to let you know there's
It's a
not
reason.
enough adults
Right.
in the district to cover the kids that they do have.
Rebecca, I work at a middle school, and it's all that we can do to keep the sixth graders separated from the eighth graders.
Right.
Yeah, because the maturity level is just 100% different. And when you start exposing kids to mixing those age groups in social situations like that, many of those older kids, they're exposed to some things that high school kids are exposed to.
Exactly. So my point is, and to say this, no, this is not thought out. No, this is not, because even when we were looking at the coupling of the schools, teachers was like, automatic, that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
That's not gonna work.
Yeah.
How are you gonna put what? I did. This whole situation is crazy. But the point of the matter is,
Yeah.
this is what's happening in HIC, and I don't think a lot of the public understands.
And especially parents, and they don't know the ramifications of putting these schools together. And Rebecca, we haven't even addressed the distance that kids are going to have to travel now to get to their school of consolidation.
Mike Miles addressed that already.
Well, but what was said, because I remember last year when the whole issue came up about the bus routes being cut out and kids having to walk a couple of miles to school, kids having to cross streets that they in major streets they didn't have to cross before with no crossing guards. You know, what exactly was said to address that aspect?
Oh, he said it Thursday night at the board meeting. It's up to the parents to figure out how they're gonna get their children to school. And he left it at that.
So, with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to see all the way from the top to the bottom. I'm going to say we're at the bottom. We're here in a municipality, a school district that's run by a municipality in name. Okay.
No, it's not in name.
Okay, well, wait a second. But then we have all the way up to Austin, the governing boards who are in charge of all the school districts in Texas. How did the people who are in charge, Rebecca, of the school districts in Texas get to be in charge there? Tell me very, very carefully and very clearly how they got to be in charge.
And what do you mean? Like the board of managers? How did they?
No. How did the governor get to be the governor?
Oh, people voted for him.
How did the person over the State Board of Education get to be over the State Board of Education who wields the power to overtake these schools? Appointed by who?
The governor who people voted for. See, when you vote for governor, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of I tell people this all the time. Texas mimics DC in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways they don't. So, but one of the ways that Texas does mimic DC is like the DOE, her
Department of Education.
her uninformed self. She's appointed. Okay, our
Right.
president saw fit to appoint her to a position she's
Right.
not qualified
Right.
for. Okay, same here. Our governor appointed a commissioner of education who's, and you can look this up. I'm not lying on the man. It's Googleable, as the kids would say. Who only his education, his tenure in education was a 6-month substitute teacher.
Now, and he's over education in Texas.
Right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what we're trying to say, there's a primary coming up in what, 2.5 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
There's a primary coming up in 2.5 weeks. If you haven't begun to feel the pinch of not voting yet, you are going to be feeling it very, very soon, but why let it get to the place where you have to feel the pinch personally? Why let it get to that point?
Right.
Rebecca, what are some of the other school districts right now that have been slated for takeover?
Beaumont ISD. Austin ISD has just got a
And didn't Beaumont ISD just come from under a takeover
They
less than
did.
5 years ago?
Yeah, they did. Austin ISD is now under a conservatorship, meaning if they don't quote unquote get themselves together within 2 or 3 years, they will be taken over Fort Worth. Now, one thing I will say, Fort Worth fought back.
Yeah.
They're in litigation right now. So that stopped them in the past. Okay. Fort Worth was slated to be taken over as well, but Fort Worth's board filed a lawsuit against the state of Texas. And Austin, when they had legislative session in Austin on last year, and that was one of the things that our superintendent, or when I say our, I mean superintendent of HISD,
Right.
said that he feels that the state of Texas needs to put in a law or an amendment where school districts cannot sue the state of Texas, even though he's getting ready to sue the state of Texas.
Right.
So, and that should show you the hypocritical leadership. But I digress. But yeah, so you have all of these schools. Splendora ISD is slated to be taken over. Spring is slated to be taken over. I think
And
Spring
the
had a
idea-
conservative
Yeah.
too. Don't quote me on that, but I think Spring had
And the
conservative
entire
shit.
idea of this, I want students to hear this too. I hope that students, there are at least a couple of students listening. The entire idea of this is to be able to pigeonhole exactly what your kids are allowed to learn in school, to be able to take the curriculum and construct it to only represent certain ideologies, certain ideas and values that may not have anything to do with anyone who looks like you, the contributions of anyone who looks like you, or who speaks your language, or any of that. The entire idea is to be able to is mind control, to be able to control what people learn. We've never lived in a society like that.
Right. And, right. And it's getting so it's getting. Let me also give this to you because we've talked about how we got here, but let me tell you what's currently going on in HISD, specifically the curriculum. These children are not learning. Crystal and I run into students all the time that are currently in HISD. They were our middle school kids. Now they are getting ready to graduate. Most of them have graduated, and then our last group of babies are graduating this year and next year.
Yes.
They tell us all the time, Miss, we're not learning anything. One of our students that we ran into in the store, she said who is graduating this
Yeah.
year from Austin High School, said that, Miss, the last time we learned anything was when we were sitting in your classrooms.
And the thing about it is, understand what this rolls over into. These kids are not prepared when it's time to take end of course exams. They're not prepared when it's time to, you can't manipulate a SAT.
No, you can't.
You can, okay, because that comes down from it's a national standard. You can manipulate the way that scores look and the way that outcomes look in Texas all day long, and it's been done. If you think an A school, like Michelle came in here and said, and she's a union leader in Texas, again here in Houston, she said, if you really think an F school can go to a B rating or an A rating in 1 year, you need to think again about that. The only way because that neighborhood is not changed, the child that is coming into the neighborhood, the demographics, the challenges that those kids come into schools with, none of that has changed. The only thing that has changed is what's on the paper in the way that you're looking at an excellent outcome now,
And I know.
as opposed to a realistic outcome.
So I took a lot of flack from people on the HISD teacher group. I did, because I compared one school, I'm gonna say low socioeconomic disadvantaged school,
Economically disadvantaged, yes.
and another very high performance school.
Right.
Oh my God, I got backlash on top of backlash for this.
Mm-hmm.
Because one school was touting an A rating. One school
Yeah.
was touted. Now, this particular school had been an FD school for over 15 years.
Yes.
And it surpassed a school
A
supposedly
magnet. Yes.
surpassed a school who's been not only a high performing school,
A nationally rated.
but it was a blue ribbon school for the last 20 years.
Yes.
Okay. And then the first thing that I said, oh, what you're trying to say, oh, well, come on now. But we all been in education a good amount of time.
And we all know the kids that come to us.
Right.
Yes.
You can't sit here and tell me that this, well, we work. I'm sorry. You can work your tail, you can work your fingers off the bone.
But you're not going to go from an F to an A.
Right.
Like
And then you're
Because
going to surpass another school that's been a blue ribbon school for the last 20 years.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is the reason why, okay? We're not saying that that kids are more intelligent than other kids. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that the types of challenges that those kids come into the classroom with that may have nothing to do with academics. They may come in and they're hungry. They may come in from homes where they have no lights. They may not have water. They may not have food. And these are the challenges that we see before we get to anything that has to do with academics. So those are the things that can affect the outcomes on tests. That's why kids are rated, and you have behavior issues because of all of those dynamics.
Right.
And-
Severe behavior
Yes.
issues.
And that is now to say that you have corrected all of those things that roll in to what an outcome is within a 9-month school year period or a 10-month school year. Come on, let's go ahead and call it what it is. The scores are manipulated in whatever way you need to. Some scores are extrapolated, some scores are put in. The rubrics that you use to grade with is changed so that those scores look a certain way. That doesn't mean that that same kid, now it's going to be interesting to see how those kids who came in at the cusp of that NES system, how they are going to fare when it comes out, when they're getting ready to take SATs, when they're getting ready to take, what's the other test?
Pre-SAT.
Yeah,
ASVAB for those kids
Yes.
who want to go to the military. They're not prepared.
they're not.
And this is what we've been saying. They are not prepared. And this is a problem. Another thing that we see rapidly in the classroom,
Yeah.
we see kids that's in the 7th grade reading at a 3rd and 4th grade level.
Or lower.
Or
Yes.
lower level. I will tell anybody, you can catch up. It is so easy to catch up a child that's 1 year behind.
Right.
If they're in the 6th grade and on the 5th grade level, you throw in a couple of skills and maybe
Right.
1 or 2 interventions, boom, they on grade level. You can move on. But when you have a child
5 grade
that's
levels.
5 grade levels and 4 grade levels,
Right.
and sometimes in the 8th grade reading on the pre-K level,
Right.
and we're not talking about just special ed kids. We're talking about kids
General ed.
who are not diagnosed special ed. You have all of these issues, and you mean to tell me that they are well prepared to take a test?
And they've jumped from an F rating to an A rating in 1 year. So what is your A rated, and here's the thing, and I can understand why those A rated campuses were livid and the parents were livid. So basically you're telling me that the kids who have been F rated for the last 15 years, now they're on the level with our kids.
And this is an example that I always give, and I've even told this to politicians. Crystal can tell you herself. I have told this to public servants who I go vote
Yeah.
for. I've had classes of 30 kids, and see, I have not been privileged to work at the high performing schools ever.
No,
My whole
we've always
entire-
worked at Title I schools.
My whole
Economically
entire career
disadvantaged, right?
has been in Title I
Me too.
schools.
Yeah.
So I've had a class of 30 children and only 7 reading on grade level.
Absolutely. That's normal. That's normal.
Out of
Yeah.
30 kids, 7 actually read on grade level.
And the thing about it is, Rebecca, let's speak to that for a second. And I know we've got to wrap it up to close it out. But here's the thing. We are in an urban environment where within the city of Houston, probably I'd say maybe 60% of the kids that we see in our public schools are gonna have that classification of economically disadvantaged anyway. And they receive services outside of what are the regularly prescribed academic services within the school environment. Our school system has been set up to try and meet that need. And when we had our last hired school board superintendent, he was quickly closing those gaps because we had the services that those kids needed in order to meet those needs, specifically called wraparound services. As soon as the new superintendent got here and the new system took over, it was decided that we're going to consolidate all that the kids are going to have a different system that meets their needs called a Sunrise Center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the problem with the Sunrise Center is that it's not on the school campuses. Kids or parents would have to maybe get on a bus, go 5 miles, go 6 miles. What if it's raining?
Not
What if
even
it's
5 miles,
yeah.
10,
Yeah.
15, 20 miles out.
What if it's raining? What if there's no parent to be able to go? You know, there are different challenges. There are different things that were completely taken out of the equation for kids to be able to be successful. And we've got to be able to meet these kids in ways other than just purely academic. And when you look at other urban school districts who are addressing these and who are successful at meeting these needs, you see legitimate growth. You see kids being able to, the majority of kids who want to go to college being able to matriculate at least a passing enough grade to get into college or pass an SAT or to get into a trade school. But why take these things away from kids that they so desperately need? We had something called backpack buddies at our school. And at the end, on every Friday, before certain kids came home from school, before they left school, they would say, backpack buddies needs to see, and they'd call the list of kids, and those kids would go down to a certain area of the school. We had a grocery store in our school that it was funded in part by Houston Food Bank, and they would stuff that kids backpack with tuna and crackers and fruit and rice and beans and the kinds of things that those families might need to be able to eat over the weekend, because there were some families who were struggling to be able to feed the kids. Those the basic needs. And it wasn't extremely expensive. This food was donated to us, but to take those elements out, that's almost like what happened with ACA.
Here's the thing, and I want to speak on it real quick, and then we can start wrapping it up and talk
And
about
SNAP benefits.
talk about the campaign real quick.
Yeah.
The reason, and I hope I don't break down and cry,
Don't cry.
because I helped write the policy for wraparound services. And it took us, and I came in at the tail end. And even at the tail end, it took us months and weeks to get it finalized. I tell people all the time, that was the first piece of legislation that I had ever written for HISD, and I was super proud of it. Again, I came in at the tail end. There were people who had been working months and months and months before I got there. So the night, and I specifically went to the board meeting the night that wraparound services was on the chopping block. Mm-hmm. And I went there, but I left angry, very, very, very angry. But more importantly, I left sad. I think when I got home, I must have cried for 2 straight hours. Simply because I knew how important that program was to our students. I knew how important that program, and I know how many lives that program literally saved. I thought about the kids who was suffering during Harvey, the hurricane, and how wraparound services was Johnny on the spot for Harvey. The kids we had a couple students at our school who had their houses burned down completely to the ground, and wraparound services was there to uplift that family and even get that family moved into a brand new house. It was so many things that wraparound services was accomplishing for students, and to see the carelessness and the lack of empathy to strip a program, and then for you to maliciously look parents in the face and the community in the face and say, you know what, we just gonna build a whole nother area.
If you want it, come and get it.
If you want it, come and get it. And literally told in the community meeting that I went to, literally said out of his mouth, well, if the families want the services bad enough, they'll come get them. It don't matter if it's right there in the school or 22 miles away from the school.
And the thing about it is, many times you might have a single parent household, or even if you have two parents in the household, both of those parents are working tooth and nail. They are working sometimes 10 hours a day. The child can't get on the bus. And we're not talking about school buses taking these kids. We're talking about the kids having to try to get on public transportation and go down and get services.
Right. And that man looked us in the face. And when I say that man, Mike Miles looked us dead in the face and said, well, if they want the services bad enough, they'll come get them.
So what we're trying to say, and we're gonna wrap it up, because this is something that just came down the pipe in the last 2 or 3 days. So we want people to know what your vote actually means and actually can do and actually can turn around if that is what needs to happen. When you don't vote, we end up with people who are sitting in decision-making positions that are going to affect us all. But let's be forward-thinking enough to say, we don't want to be on the receiving end of this if it goes down. So we want someone who's going to be sympathetic and empathetic enough to the conditions of our children and our families, so that they're gonna, if something has to be taken away, something else can be taken away other than something that is sustenance for our kids to even be able to survive and to thrive and to be able to be successful at school.
So the reason we bring this to you guys now, this is our kind of our special emergency podcast. The reason we felt
we were pretty upset.
The need to come off the campaign trail, and I'm going to speak to that in just a second, but because we wanted people to know, that we wanted the community to know, we wanted parents to know, and understand other districts, you're not safe.
You are not safe.
I want other districts to know, because it's easy to turn a blind eye and say, oh, okay, well, that's just HISD. I'm
Right.
over here and such and such. The whole point of them taking over HISD, the thought process was this. If we could take over the largest school district in the state of Texas, there's not a single school
We're coming
district
for you.
in the state of Texas that can be taken over.
We're coming for you.
Right. It was the Guinea Pigs Project.
Right.
So,
but HISD have been pushing back from, the stakeholders at HISD, they've been pushing back from the very, very beginning. I don't think that he felt it was going to be, he didn't know it was going to be this hard.
Yeah. So that's what it was. This is important to us. Every single candidate is talking about this issue. Every single current public servant is talking about this issue, because we know the lifeline of the city runs through the schools.
That's right.
Let me say that again. The lifeline of the city runs through public education.
Yes, it does.
So when public
From the top to the bottom
falls, everything around it is going to crumble. Kind of like,
say that again.
When education falls,
Public education.
when public education falls, everything around it crumbles. Kind of like that old saying, when the United States when the United States sneeze, the world catch a cold. It's the same way here. So we felt the need to come to teachers, to educators, come and tell you, even though she is running for office, she's still an educator. And it was
every day.
And it was our responsibility
to break it down for you.
Break it down to let you know what's happening. Y'all have to go vote. Okay? I cannot stress that enough. I can't scream that enough. I can't put it out enough. Y'all have to go vote.
And understand this, please. Please understand this. If you were in the classroom 20 years ago, if you were in the classroom 10 years ago, your frame of reference is not what it needs to be able to make decisions for what's going on in the classroom right now. Right. Because we're living in a completely different time.
Right.
You have got to be able to be in those shoes and walk in those shoes to see the types of challenges that these students are having. Can the challenges be, are they insurmountable? No, they're not, but you've got to have a really good touch point as to what they are. That's why I said this earlier. If you are an elected official, Michelle and I both said this when we came in that morning, and we just did an impromptu, we did an impromptu podcast. Some people leave the classroom because they just don't want to be bothered with the headache of what's going on with the students anymore. I mean, honestly, they don't. And that's the reason that I chose to stay in the classroom as long as I have, because it's important for me to know exactly what's going on with my students and exactly how I can help move them forward. These are going to be the people taking care of us,
My
you know?
Lord.
Yeah. And so, with that in mind, take 2 days out of the month, just 2 days, Rebecca. I would implore any of your state legislators who are out there, when you're not in session, take 2 days out of the month. Go and sub in a public school. See what we're talking about. It's not what you think. It's not the school. It's not the school that you went to back in the 90s or the 2000s or the 50s or the 60s. It's not. We're talking about a different animal right now. And to be able to navigate that, to be able to make decisions that are going to affect those students, you need to know what you're dealing with and the kinds of challenges that you have. And if you have been, nothing against principals or whatever, or administrators are not sitting there in that classroom with those students every day. So it's a different frame of reference. But as a classroom teacher, I can tell you this. We need some people at the table, some teachers at the table who know exactly what's going on with those students, who have the diplomacy, who have the critical thinking skills, who have the compassion, the empathy, the sympathy sometimes, to be able to make those decisions and to make sure that the challenges that the kids are having are being met. If my kids can't eat, let me say this. One of my students this year, Rebecca, I was wondering where that student was for the past 6 weeks. Didn't come back to school after Christmas. I'm wondering, where is this student? This is one of my best students. And another student came up to me after class and said, Miss Dillard, I can tell you where he is. His mom is not letting him come to school right now because they're afraid that if he comes to school, ICE is going to grab him, and then the mother is going to go down and try to get her son, and ICE is going to end up grabbing the whole family. Nobody should have to think about that kind of thing and sending their kids to school. But you know what? As unscrupulously as things are being done right now, as easy as it is to say one thing and do something completely different and it not be admonished.
Right.
I understand where the lady was coming from. I get it. Is this the kind of America that you want to live in, where you've got to be able to pull out an ID and prove who you are every day just walking down the street? Is it?
And then the powers that be in our government is trying to make voting hard. I said it.
Yeah.
I know. We got to wrap this up.
Very difficult.
I have
Yeah.
to say this because there is an act right now that's in the Senate, and this act is called the SAVE Act. Okay. Thank God, Democrats, please keep holding the line on this. And I think they will, because this is going to disenfranchise 42 million American women. Okay. So the SAVE Act is it's a election law. And we know that the states the election laws are state sponsored. So
Right.
the states handle the election laws. But at the national level, they can set the election laws. And if the states choose to adopt those laws, then they can. If they choose not to.
Explain, and I'm gonna really zero in on this because I want you to listen very carefully to what women who are listening to this, listen very carefully to what she's getting ready to say.
So the SAVED Act is an act where you would have to have your birth certificate in addition to your ID in order
State issued ID.
your state issued ID in order to vote. Well, okay, but 42 million women in America are married to their husbands and have their husband's last name. Another 30 million women, okay, that's just 42 that's currently married with their husbands. Another 30 million women are widowed.
Yeah.
They still have their husband's last name, but their husbands are deceased.
Right.
So what this says, if the ID and the birth certificate does not match,
You can't vote.
you cannot vote. I'm gonna say that again. If the birth certificate or the ID does not match, you cannot vote. Well, can I just bring my marriage license? Absolutely not. They're not even counting the marriage license.
And Rebecca, here's the thing. Is your birth certificate ever going to reflect your married name?
No, it's not. It's
You didn't
not.
have your married name when you were born. So anyone who's sitting in a position who would try to arrest the rights of that many people who have fought to be where they are, educated women, women who are raising families, women who are teaching our next generation, women who are saving lives in medical in hospitals every day. There is an attempt to actually turn back the time as far as you being able to have birth certificates. Not to mention those people who were born in rural areas, who,
Like my mother.
were midwives, delivered these babies, and you may have a handwritten birth certificate or something like that, which probably won't even be acknowledged.
No, it won't be. It won't be because it has to be a standard birth certificate from a hospital. My mother is 80 years old. She was not born in a hospital.
Right.
None of her sisters were born in a hospital. They were all born by midwives.
Right.
So even if she goes, her birth certificate wouldn't even be accepted because they would say that's an invalid form of ID. One thing I will say, not a single Democrat is voting on this. All of the senators all the Republican senators in the House, not one single Democrat. Not
How about the female Republican representatives? Are they voting in favor of this?
They're lockstep. They're lockstep with their president.
Okay,
in order to
so
keep their position.
so do you see why it's so important for you to vote in your primaries all the way up through your national elections? Because in the primaries, you're going to get people in there who are on the state level, not going to rubber stamp that kind of thing and not allow it to happen in Texas.
Right. And here's the thing. Now, here's the problem with that. Because again, states make election laws. Okay. When the federal government makes election laws, it's up to the states whether they're going to adopt it. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Certain states, which are our blue states, we know they're not going to adopt this policy. It's going to be null and void. But you have states in red blood South who will adopt this policy and make this policy a part of their election laws.
So you end up with
Guess where Texas falls? Oh, okay.
So you have a situation whereby, and the whole idea is to take away the vote of women.
Right. Because they cannot nullify the 19th Amendment. Okay, that's in the Constitution, and they don't have the 2/3 votes of the states to even nullify it. So they know that the as much as they want to repeal the 19th Amendment, that's not going to happen because they don't have enough states to vote for this.
So they're trying to figure out what to do to supersede it.
Right. So since they know that the 19th can't be repealed,
Yeah.
the 19th Amendment, which gave the women the right to vote, they have to go another way about it. And the reason being because they are saying that women are turning the tide in a lot of these elections.
Yes.
If you look at Virginia, 76% of the
Women.
female vote got Abby elected to the governorship.
Yeah.
Same in New Jersey. I think it was a little less. It was about 69%
Right.
of women turned the tide in that election. So people, and we know when one party can't win on merits, they will cheat without a doubt. They will find a way to cheat. So we're saying all of this to say this, and now we're coming to a close.
Yeah.
But we're saying all of this to say this. is that it is so important for you to vote. It's not just vote in just in one election. You need to vote in every single election. This is what's coming down the pipe. There are powers that be that are in play that are trying to erode rights away from individuals that don't look at society the same way they do.
That's right.
So it is important. And speaking of voting, we have Miss Crystal Diller, my segue, who is running for House District 131.
And we got on our crystal gear. We get our crystal gear.
She's running for House District 131. So, Crystal, as we're getting ready to close, can
Yes,
you please
Rebecca.
tell people, first of all, what areas that cover?
Absolutely, Rebecca. House District 131. And first of all, before I even get to the areas, let me say this. My job every day, what I get paid to do, is that of a teacher. I'm a history teacher, so I'm teaching social structure in our society. And everything that we talk about in here has to do with social structure or the lack thereof, or the dismantling thereof of social structure in our society. I teach my kids based on historical facts.
Right.
I lay the facts in front of them, and I allow them to make a decision based on their heart as far as what is appropriate, what is good, what is bad, what is fair, what is just. I don't tell them that. I simply lay the facts out. And when the facts are laid out, even middle school kids are pretty astute at being able to determine what is appropriate from what's not appropriate.
Right.
Okay? It's not about hurting anybody's feelings. It's not about making someone covering over anything. It's about laying the facts on the line like we've been doing for the last 100+ years. You lay the facts out there and you let people make their own decision. Now, I do this podcast because I know how important it is for people who may not be sitting in a place where they are getting historical touch points every day, or they may not be listening to because of the lack of time or the lack of being able to access information. In a quick manner that they may need it in. I do this to be able to open people's perspectives to actually what's going on and the things that affect their lives. I try to bring them resources so that when certain things are being challenged to be taken away from them, we find areas that are going to stand in the gap so that they don't find themselves in a position of loss. If this is being taken away by the government, if it's being taken away by the state, let's see what we can get in here to fill that gap so that you are not at a deficit because of some rule that's being made.
Right.
But that's why I do this podcast. That's why Rebecca and I have been in here for the last 4 years doing this. Coalition for Barrier-Free Living, Houston City College, Cognitive Justice,
Houston Ebony Opera Guild,
the Opera Guild, and I don't want to say accredited learning services, but Sequina,
that's the name of it, accredited learning service.
No, it's not, and I looked it up, and I always get it wrong. But and they're a high school that is an actually accredited, legitimate high school where someone could go in and earn their high school diploma. Not a GED, but a high school diploma recognized all over the United States in as little as 3 months, free of charge. Okay, for adults who may be returning to try to get their high school diploma after being gone many years. Yes, but having access to these kinds of things makes it more palatable when you have things being attempted to be snatched away from you at every turn.
Right.
That's what we want to do here with this podcast. That's what we do when we get up from our classrooms and then come into here. We want people in District 131. We want people in Houston. We want people all over Texas to know that regardless of what's happening up in Washington, regardless of what's happening in Austin, that we're still going to make sure that you have the resources you need to keep moving forward.
Exactly.
There are powers that be that don't want you to keep moving forward. But we're going to make sure that if there are resources out there to put you on a trajectory to where you're moving forward and your family is too, we're going to make sure that we bring that to you. But Rebecca, District 131 is a vast district. It covers I'm going to say all the way from Beltway 8 and I-45. Okay, over in the Sagemont area, all the way back to parts of Gulfgate, even parts of Palm Center, back into Hiram Clark, some parts of Sunnyside, Crestmont, Alameda Plaza,
All of Hiram Clark.
all of Hiram Clark, yes. Parts of A-Leaf, going into parts of little offshoots of Stafford, Southwest Houston, Fondren Southwest, the Hobby area, a large area, but definitely an area where the people need to have access to everything that they can and everything that they deserve in order to have good livability in Houston at this point in time.
Mhm.
And that's what's important. And I implore you to make your voice known in that voting booth. It's not a booth anymore, it's a little cubicle. In the voting cubicle, when early voting starts on Tuesday, the 17th, and all the way up until March the 3rd. Rebecca, this has been a grassroots effort from the very beginning.
Yes.
And my gosh, I cannot say how much we appreciate the people who have stood up and stood with us and stood behind us. And the teachers, sometimes your teachers can't give a big donation, and we get it. But the teachers who have stood with us with the $50 and the $25 donations, some of them $100 donations, saying that we believe in what you're doing. We know that you're going to stand up for us. We know that we're going to have a voice at the table. And we know that if it's up to you, we're going to turn things around here in our city, educationally, and all over the Houston area.
Also, and I had to talk to Crystal about this. This is brand new. She don't even know that I want to
Oh
do
my
this.
gosh.
I'm putting this ask out here. I'm asking every single teacher under the sound of my voice. Okay. And then we're gonna close out for real, I promise.
For real.
So I'm asking every single teacher under the sound of my voice, if you find it in your heart and the Lord touches it, if you could donate $13.11, 131, to Crystal's campaign for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to give the first $13, okay? And
Oh,
11 cents.
thank you, Rebecca.
I'm gonna get the so teachers, I am asking, this is just an ask, this is not mandatory, because what's mandatory is your vote if you live in them areas.
Yes. Teachers have got to stand with teachers because communities rise when there's a teacher at the table. Yes.
So I'm asking, and I'm giving her the first donation. So I'm not gonna ask anything of you that I wouldn't do. Okay.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I'm
I
asking
appreciate it.
all teachers to give $13.11. That's 131. If you think about it, just $13.11. And I'm going to be asking this from this time to March 3rd forward, because I'm gonna tell you those $13 they add up.
And there are thousands of us, ladies and gentlemen. If all the teachers supported these teachers who are running, who are going to make sure that they've got the teachers' interest and the students' interest at heart, not the state board, not TEA, not Mike Morath or any of those, but the teachers' interest at heart, we're going to push and push and push until we push through and we are heard and we're making a difference.
Okay, so Crystal, tell them where they can donate that $13.11 to you.
You can go to ActBlue, CrystalDillardForTexas.com. On ActBlue, you can donate Crystal Dillard for Texas. It's Crystal Dillard, the numeral 4, TX on Cash App.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to Crystal Dillard for Texas on GoFundMe. Or you can make checks payable to Crystal Dillard for Texas campaign 6323 Creek Bend, Houston, Texas 77096. And as a matter of fact, I'm going over to my mom's house. She just called me right before the podcast started and she said, I'm getting the last of these mailers out because her friends want to do things by check. And I understand, I get it. I'll take a check.
Right.
I will take a check.
So the goal, this for the next up until March 3rd, which is election day.
Yes.
And even on election day, we'll still take it.
Yes.
So March 3rd, $13.11. So that's less than $20.
Yeah.
A little more than 10, but less than 20.
And tell your other teacher friends to do the same thing. Because I don't care if teachers are retired. I don't care if they're teachers who are on hiatus. I don't care if there are teachers who are in the classroom right now. Substitute teachers.
Right.
Teachers have got to stand up for teachers. I had these things happen to me personally. So I know what it feels like to feel devalued as a teacher.
Right.
To feel as though you're not being treated in a professional way or you're being disregarded.
Right.
Thank goodness I'm not in that situation right now, but I've been there before.
Right.
Someone has got to stand up for teachers, public school students, and public schools in the state of Texas. And if it's not going to be anybody else, by gosh, it needs to be us,
Okay,
teachers.
so my final plea, that's 3 times. We have this thing in the Democratic Party where we say everything in threes.
And threes.
It's okay. So for a third time, 13 again, I'm donating to Crystal's. She's gonna get my $13.11. So I need all teachers between now and March 3rd to please donate $13.11. So that's that just that's McDonald's money. So
Lunch at McDonald's.
yeah, that's McDonald's money.
Lunch at McDonald's with the iced coffee.
Right. Okay. So just $13 that we're asking for you to set aside for Crystal's campaign. Crystal, one more time, where can they donate that $13.11?
They can donate, and we'll make sure that we drop those QR codes and links into the comments. We're going to do that as soon as we close out. If you don't want to try to remember that, you don't have to. We're going to drop those into the comments. But if you'd like to simply go to my website and read a little bit more about me and the things that I've been doing for the past 4 years to try to bring access, affordability, and equity to the community, I'm an open book. Everything that I've been doing, you can see it right there on my webpage, and you can go to YouTube or Facebook and just go to Crystal Dillard or Crystal Dillard for Texas. And you can see all of our podcasts. We've got hundreds of them, and they are all very, very informative.
Now, while y'all watching the podcast, go ahead and drop that $13.11. While y'all watching the podcast, you can just go ahead and just slide on in at $13.11.
And here's what's going to get us over the top, guys. Share it with another teacher. Share it with a parent who's got school-age kids. Share
Parents,
it with a
if you want to
grandparent.
donate
Yeah.
$13.11, you can. If you're not a teacher, you still can donate $13.11.
If you care about public education, we sound like some of those people on those telethons.
$13.11 is the goal. Okay, that's all we asking for. We're not asking for 20s, 50s. Now, if you want to donate that, please do whatever's in your heart.
Yes.
But the minimum we're asking for is $13.11.
Yes, that's a trip to Subway or a trip to McDonald's, ladies and
Right.
gentlemen, and it can get a teacher over the top
Right.
because we all know that communities rise when there's a teacher at the table.
And even
Yes.
if you donated one time, we're not asking for multiple donations of it. Even if you donated one time, that's
That's gonna
been one
help.
time
That's
to
right.
help our campaign. So with that being said, I'm gonna close this out today because you're the candidate.
And let me say this first, Rebecca. We came in extemporaneously, so we don't have our second laptop here. So when Rebecca closes out, I'm gonna go ahead. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna move over to our camera
Okay.
so that I can close this out. But you go ahead, Rebecca.
So I just want to thank everybody for always supporting the Crystal Loves Texas podcast, and we love you dearly. Again, we're asking for the $13.11 from teachers or anybody who wants to donate. And ma'am, we will be at our regular scheduled time next Friday. I promise you we will. And we thank you for everything. Crystal's campaign, House District 131. And we can do it. Bye, guys.